Thanks so much for joining us. The reason for the call is you obviously scored and did very well on the Greater 901 um, questionnaire, ballot, and scorecard. And so we're doing a couple pre-interviews before our big release on Tuesday. And just want to hear more about, for our members and others. Scott, you're, 2.5, maybe 10 plus years of legislative experience, two-time Memphis City Councilman. Why in the world are you throwing your name back in the ring to get involved in Memphis City Council again? I mean, haven't you deserved more time on the porch?
Well, I served on the council, and then I went to work for Plow Foundation, and then I went and served on the school board. And I was on the school board for 6 years, and I'm going to see if my light is bugging me. Maybe this will make a difference. And a little better, I guess. And the school board obviously is an important part of our community. Probably one of the most important parts is educating our children. But I was happy to do the job, and I tried to do the job to the best of my ability, but I was totally miserable on the school board. It is just so frustrating. When I say that, I mean, it's just so frustrating. It's just kind of like, how are we ever going to make a dent? Which, I feel like with Dorsey and his 2025 plan, we were starting to make the dent. And then when he decided, he was just burned out, and I totally understood, his perspective on that. And then it just kind of went to hell, and then COVID hit. I mean, I was a big supporter of Joris Ray because he was familiar with the plan, and I felt like we would just be able to move on and continue because we were starting to see results. I know you don't want to talk about school board, but this kind of leads to my answer is, and so that, I supported him thinking, we're just going to keep guiding the boat down the stream or up the stream, and COVID hit, and then of course his indiscretions hit, and but the reason why I wanted him was because I knew that if we hired a new superintendent from outside, they were going to make wholesale changes. I mean, it's the nature, they would want their own team. And when you start an initiative like that, it takes about 3 years before you start to see results. And we were just starting to see the results of 2025 when all of this took place. That all being said is, I would tell people openly, it was so much easier to be on the city council than the school board. And when Frank Colvette came to me and said, I'm term limited, and he said, if you might want to think about running, I gave it some thought. And I was like, I'd really like to go back. I mean, obviously at my age, I think I was quoted in the Daily Memphian, this is my grand finale. I don't see, where I live, and I don't see any other offices that I could go to serve the public, but I do have the ability to serve District 2. And I really, I enjoyed my time at the council, and I'd really like to go back. And I really think that we're at a critical point in the city we know we're going to have a new mayor, and we need experienced leadership. And I've got 10 years of legislative experience that I think, when I come to the council, I'm not going to be feeling my way around. And, I know how the game is played, and we all know that games are played, and I know the ins and outs of the organization. And I just feel like, this gives me an opportunity to go up there and make a difference.
All right, let's talk about one of my favorite subjects then. A lot of people ask the Greater 901. We have been obviously, to a lot of people's chagrin and just frustration, completely sort of agnostic, especially me personally in the mayor's race. It's going to be the first mayoral race really since pre-Dick Hackett, pre-1991 when Mayor Harrington beat Dick. That we have an open incumbent new mayor who has, if you look at the tracking polls, with the exception of Mayor Harrington, who may return to the office, zero executive or city council experience in the Memphis government. So I always tell people, look, if you're having trouble deciding who's to support for mayor, make sure you get the city council right. The next council because of term limits, will be one of the most inexperienced councils, right? I mean, everyone who's got 2 terms, that's all. So we're going to lose Martavius Jones, Frank Colvette, some guys that have been around the block. We'll have a few guys that are grandfathered in, like Ford Senior. So tell me, why does experience matter so much to the next council with term limits? Because I think that is a crucial element that a lot of people are missing about city government.
So when I was elected in 2004, and I was a junior member, I was probably, in 2004, I may have been the only new member.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been, but it was pretty much, Brent Taylor, Jack Sammons, Tom Marshall, Ed Ford was there, senior, Joe Brown, Barbara Holt, a lot of years of experience there. I was new. I was lost for the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like some people, took me under the wing, and I thought they were trying to help me. And really what they were trying to do is, guide me on their agenda. And I didn't know any better at the time. And, Ricky Pete was there. And, Ricky was, despite his indiscretions, I mean, he was something to work with. And, so I was kind of lost, just feeling my way around and everything. And, this time would be different. I mean, I'm not going in. I would be, I'm basically a seasoned veteran at the council. So, because, I served 4 years, and then I served my year as chairman. And, it's important to know how the budget works, how the departments work, what are things that go on that you really need to pay attention to. I'll give you a classic example about paying attention to things is, I think it was when Joseph Lee was the finance director, and he brought a budget to us, and everybody was so concerned about the spending, where we're spending the money and how we're spending the money. And nobody paid attention to Joseph's predictions on, or projections, I should say, projections on the revenue.
Mm.
And it turned out, so then Harrington makes Joe, nominates him for MLG&W. Long battle. He finally gets the 7 votes to go over there. Then that August, the results of the previous budget come out. He missed every income projection, everyone, by 10%. Everything. He missed property tax, beer tax, everything we project income on. He was totally overshot the mark.
Yep.
And we were in a $50 million deficit. So that's what I'm talking about, is nobody paid it,
they're worried about dividing the pie, not the size of the pie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what happened, I'll tell you what happened was there was a downturn in the economy. The state issues their recommendations. They have a low, medium, and high on every income category. And Joseph went with the high in his first budget. But in the meantime, the state revised their projections and lowered everything. So not only was Joseph at the high on the original, but now he was really out there.
And that's sort of the troubles with the comptroller's office. I remember those days.
Yeah.
So, I'm fond of saying that it takes at least a couple of months to figure out where the restrooms are. And,
right.
During this time, we really don't have time to, with the direction the city's headed in, over 60-75% of people polled said it's heading the wrong direction. 1 out of 2 Memphians, at least at some point, considered leaving. Public safety is obviously driving that sentiment. Scott, you've been around a long time. You've worked with the police and fire associations. What's your idea on how we get a better handle on police and fire, and in particular, knowing that we're going to have a new mayor, regardless of they're going to have to come in and assess the department on their own, and they'll be looking for the city council either for more resources or potentially a new hire. What say you? What do we do to right this ship?
Well, that's another thing that the council, has an important role in that. Whoever becomes mayor, they're going to have to appoint a chief of police and a chief of fire. I've talked to Gina Sweat. I don't know when, but she told me that she's in the drop program, which means, she's in the process of retiring. I don't know if she would be a choice a new mayor would want to make as fire chief. I get the feeling that I think CJ Davis is done. I don't think anybody is really excited. I don't know her personally, and so, um, but those two appointments have to come before the council for approval, and that's where we can play a role in making sure that we get the right person in each department, and especially in the police department. And I want to build. There's the number, we're 300 and something officers short. I was just reading an article right before I got on in the Daily Memphian where they're quoting Bill Gibbons about what would the police officers do, if we hired him. It was a very interesting article. But it's kind of the direction I'm going. It's not just the numbers. It's building a better police force. It's building a more effective police force. And I was around when Blue Crush started. I don't know if do you remember Blue Crush?
Look, I was a huge Larry Godwin. I think it was one of Mayor Harrington's best hires. He brought in Larry, and I got to know him well. But I mean, Larry was a no nonsense motorcycle turn gang turn motorcycle. But the best thing about Larry Godwin, in my opinion, was he brought the culture, but he brought the data. He was a data guy.
Well, that's where I was going.
He was old school hard knocks guy in a way that you could be smarter at policing. And he understood the difference between, I think that's where you're going, of having that sort of macho kind of masculine, attitude, and goes, whoa, you don't have to do any of that stuff if you're smart. And so he had a lot of buy-in from the rank and file, which
that's
we could use less bravo and more smart.
Yeah. The data-driven process. I mean, and it's like, it's right here. We have it, and we know how to use it. And that's what they were talking about in the article, is that's where we don't have enough boots to implement the programs effectively. So, but that's what I'm for, is using our technology. I even, there was a friend of mine, he's going to send me these white papers. He was talking about in other cities, and I don't know if we have it here, but he was talking about it's something as simple as the LED lighting installed, like in downtown, that in some cities, the police actually have control of that and can raise and lower the volume of the light.
Yep. Smart street lighting's a huge potential. Security cameras. Look, I'm a very big believer in especially in downtown, of environmental design. We spend a fortune with basically cops that don't want to talk to motorists, barricading streets, standing there with their hands in their pockets. And it's like, I can get a movable ballast for $2,500. Why do I need a police officer making overtime, sitting down there, not being as cordial as they could be to tourists and residents alike? There's a lot to uncover in public safety. But one of the big frustrations that I have with the mayoral candidates is that everyone's now saying public safety is number one, and I'm your guy. I'm your gal. And then they all say, but we're not going to defund the police, but we're also going to do all these other programs. But there doesn't seem to be a big push or a big recognition that the only way we're going to expand revenues for city government is to grow the local economy. Scott, I mean, you've spent a lot of time in the nonprofit sector, a lot of times working with lower and disadvantaged Black households. How do we raise the Black middle class in Memphis?
Well, a huge opportunity we have is the Blue Oval. And we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. I've been following that. I'm sure you have. That's a huge, and people say, oh, well, people aren't going to live in Memphis and work in the Blue Oval. I disagree. I think, I live out in Cordova, and I can get to Blue Oval quicker than I can get downtown.
Sure.
So, it's not out of the realm, and they're good jobs. And it's not just the jobs like working for Ford. There's the battery plant, and then there's the other supplier that's building on there. I forget what they're making. And I know the people who are going to make the interior, the seats and all that, everything for the vehicle is going to be made on that campus. But then there's all around all the support that's going to, you're going to have rest. I've added up so far with what's going in with the plant, the battery plant, and the other supplier. It's like 13,000 workers are going to be there every day in Stanton, Tennessee. And you need stuff around there. You need restaurants, you need housing around there, which means you need construction workers to build the housing. And we
Mhm.
have all this, and this is going to go on. I mean, the plant's scheduled to open, I think, in 25, but the build out and everything is going to go on, for more years after that. And so here we have opportunity for people to get jobs. Maybe you don't work at Ford. Maybe you're on, with the home builders who are building subdivisions out there, and you're a bricklayer, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, all that. And it's a big opportunity, but we don't have a skilled workforce. And we got to make sure that, we get people who need change in their life and looking for opportunities, and connect them up with the organizations who can provide them the skill. Southwestern, or Southwest uh, has programs, and we have the Tennessee, the TEC, the technical colleges that, and you can pretty much go to these things for free
Right.
and learn these skills. And that's, I think, is a huge advantage, because if we can get people, with livable wages, decent jobs, and then work on. I've worked when I was at Plow with the organizations that build affordable housing. Roshan Austin, it
I
seems
love
to be,
Rashawn. Yeah,
yeah,
she's wonderful.
she seems to be knocking it out of the park.
Mhm.
Um, I remember there was a project, I think it was called Bear Creek, that was building 2 and 3 bedroom homes, kind of in that area between Fraser and Raleigh,
Mhm.
right before Raleigh starts. And they'd come to us for a grant to help them. And he was explaining to me that, people who live in Fraser, they really would like to stay there, but they're living in crappy houses. They're small, they're, antiquated, and there's not much of an inventory or market. And so
Mm.
that's what we need to do too, is people who don't necessarily want to leave where they're living, but they want better product.
Sure.
And
No,
organization,
that's a huge issue. With home ownership being one of the fastest gateways and largest assets of a person, being able to own your home, live there, have it appreciate, pass it generationally, or at least gain wealth out of it is huge for neighborhoods like Fraser.
yeah.
Um,
And some of these homes though, that people, they're they're poorly insulated, no modernization in it at all. The wiring, the plumbing, everything, is just from the 50s.
Scott,
And
Scott, real quick, going back to your school board days, and there's a lot of chatter among the different mayoral campaigns that the city of Memphis should be investing back into the Shelby County school system, Memphis Shelby County school system. Um, it was a large portion of one point of the budget, crowded out a lot of different programs. Um, it's now over a $2 billion kind of dollar budget today. Should,
2.6.
should Memphis taxpayers once again double down? I mean, we're already taxed as Shelby County. Should we be using Memphis property taxes to boost up school funding? Or, well, let me put it this way: should we, if so, should we just write them a check, or should it be very targeted?
Very targeted. One, we don't want to get caught up in the maintenance of effort with the
Correct.
state.
Gotcha.
So, and two, we need to make sure that the dollars that the city of Memphis invests go to the students that live within the city.
Mhm.
Um, and so where I'm going is, we need to look for the programs that we can support. I mean, for example, universal pre-K, I
Mhm.
think is a huge thing of getting these kids prepared to go to school. And I know, that we participate in that, and we need to make sure that we're continuing to do that. We need to continue to work with Porter Leaf, who is offering pre-K, has the pre-K slots. Preparing these kids for school is a huge advantage, which we don't, which is where we really suffer, because we have kids that look at the third grade reading levels. It's like in the 31, 32%. And the third grade is that key where you switch over, you learn to read up to third grade, and then after third grade, you read to learn. Well, if you don't know how to read, you're not going to understand the math book and the biology book and the history books. So, but that's like planting the seeds for the harvest, 3 falls from now.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure we have that going, and we're investing in that. But then the question is, what about this group of kids that are, in high school now that are lost, and what do we do with them? And that's where I go back and, working, we can invest in this and investing in programs. And I don't think the city should do it. I think the city should look for agencies whose expertise is doing this and make sure that we're preparing our rising juniors and seniors for the work world, for what's next.
Yeah. Scott, you, one of the things that we also have as a huge platform us is working within local government, working within the county government, but the state government. We all know that Memphis has to have a great relationship with Nashville if we're antagonistic, or if we don't have our act together as a local community saying this is what we need to prioritize from the state. We just don't get the resources we need. And we have to have better resources. As the candidate in District 2 endorsed by the Republican Party, and having won multiple races over your career in a very bipartisan fashion, what makes you best suited to work with basically a Democratic Shelby County government and then a supermajority in the state?
Well, I don't know if you knew that I ran for state house in 2016 and won the primary. And that was the year that Beth Harwell, who was the Speaker of the House, decided to run for governor, which opened the door. Cassida wanted to become Speaker, which meant William Lambert wanted to become the head of the caucus, which meant, and there was this whole, everybody was looking.
Big sea change, yeah.
Yeah, which was great for me because I was they like, if McCormick wins, I want his vote. And so I got to meet all of these guys. They courted me, and, and not all the guys were the guys who ended up in the seats, but, whereas in a normal race, I don't think I would have made those connections. So I met, William Lambert. Do you know him? Bill Lambert?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually was the one I came the closest. He came down to Memphis, 2 or 3 times during my race, and we talked. And of course, there was Cassida, and I had a weird feeling about him from the beginning. And you know how that works out.
Sure.
But, I made a lot of good connections up there. Met a lot of the lobbyists who were, they're still up there. And of course, on the school board, we had our lobbyist, Tony Thompson was our lobbyist for the school board, who is Fred Thompson's son. So I have a lot of good connections up there. I think I have a lot of friends up there. And so, I'm not going in being, I won't be a stranger, let's just say. I also picked up, they don't really think a whole lot of Memphis. And now that was in my school board, I took a couple of trips up with Dorsey, and it was funny because, everybody is always, nice, slap you on the back, nice to meet you and everything. And Dorsey would look at me on our drive back and go, they don't like me at all, do they? I said, probably not, Dorsey.
Well, with the right leadership, we can change that. Scott, I've ended all these interviews with this question. How much did you pay to get the highest grade on the Greater 901 ballot? How much did your campaign write the Greater 901?
I don't understand the question.
Did you pay to get our endorsement?
No, I did not pay to get your
endorsement. All right. We're making that abundantly clear as people know that you earned the spot you got and the grade you
I'm
got.
cheap.
That's where we are too, because we just want the best for Memphis. And
understand.
And
hey, I got a quick question for you, just totally off. So I went down to the opening of Tom Lee, and so there was the big concrete section. Is that where you're trying to build another hotel? Okay.
Yeah, a big old hole in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's got concrete in it. It's not a hole.
Well, we were ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to get it, in my head, because I hadn't been downtown in a couple of months, and when I got to Beale and where the Orpheum is, I hadn't seen the completed, transportal module, whatever it's called. That thing's gorgeous. I mean, that whole intersection now look completely different.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, good for you.
We had a ton of momentum in 2019. COVID, we made a lot of silly mistakes as a country and locally. But look, if anything, Memphians are resilient. We're going to get some great leadership at City Hall and in the council, and I have a lot of faith that we can turn the ship around. But it all starts September 15th with early voting, and on election day, October 5th, and we send the right people to the right spots. I think we'll be in a good shape. Okay.
How we all announce?
We're going to do it because all of us are traveling next week. We are going to do it a digital virtual press conference. It'll be very cool.
Will I get a notice so that I can?
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for the time.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Bye-bye.